Hey, welcome back to True-Moto-Resto, and today we get started on this 1990 Kawasaki ZX7. All right, so before I get torn into this, just a quick reminder of what we're gonna do here. I don't know, this is probably, I'm hoping it is going to be kind of more of a, I'll call it minor mechanical and cosmetic restoration. Because the bike runs fine, but I will try to fire it up again and run it just to be sure. There is an oil leak, and it's dripping right out of the very front of the fairing here. And I know there's an oil cooler there, so my guess is, fingers crossed, it's just an O-ring or something on a oil cooler line, but we won't know until I get all that apart and see what's going on in there. Hopefully it's nothing major. So it'll get a full body and paint treatment, new decals. I do have replacement reflector for here. The tires will be replaced. I'm gonna get the tires taken off the wheels. I'll pull the brake rotors off, everything else, get the wheels painted. I'll do those at the same time that I do the rest of the body work. The exhaust system I will take in and have the header and the mid pipe blasted. I will polish this Muzzy silencer and get rid of the self-tapping screws that somebody has put in there and replace those with correct rivets, because finding an OEM exhaust and stuff for this is not going to be easy. I do have new reflectors for the back, or not reflectors, new turn signals, which these are, I don't know, these cheaper aftermarket things that people stick on there that look like hell. So new ones will be going on to the newly fabricated rear fender. So this is kind of a half and half deal. You recall from one of my other videos, I kind of manufactured this myself. The top half here is the genuine rear fender. The bottom half here is off a different bike, but I kind of grafted it on there just to have it. I mean, I will still continue to search for the correct full uncut fender, but that could take quite some time. Similarly, I couldn't find one of these, so I bought one of these out of Czech Republic. It's really nicely made. It fits great. All those holes are going to line up perfectly with what I need as well. So that's going to be good. I bought this from AirTech Solo Cal, so that'll have to get fitted and painted. Got new tires here. I got a couple of shop manuals that I grabbed off Fleabay. And this is another thing that had been really badly butchered on this bike. Somebody had just hacked the living daylights out of the battery box, so I have a replacement battery box. I've got some rear view mirrors in there. So I got, came with one, and then I managed to get another one from somebody online. Some of the other bits and pieces, I was missing these infill panels. These are the things that kind of go up inside the upper fairing there. So somebody on the Kawasaki Ninja forum was kind enough to sell me those, and that same person was exceptionally helpful in finding that battery box as well. So some really good people on that site, and I'm very appreciative of that. So these are my OEM turn signals that were missing. I don't know how I ended up getting two sets, but I did. I think I forgot that I bought a set and then found another set. So there we go. There's all kinds of stuff in here. And what else have I got? I don't know. I think there's bearings, wheel bearings. I think that is in there. Head bearings in there. And what else have I got in here to go on? All kinds of stuff. Wheel bearings, I think, and oil filter, and there's a new clutch slave seal, rear license plate reflector, fork seals, all kinds of stuff in there. I can't even remember what I bought, but anyway, I think everything that I currently know of that it needs is here. There are always surprises. Always, always, always. So there will be things that I'll find along the way. Let's not kid ourselves. I've never had a case where that hasn't happened. So, yeah, it's, I mean, is it in great shape? I wouldn't say so, no. But it's not really, really, really bad. It's, you know, largely there. All the body work is original. It hasn't been painted before. It runs. Tires are shot. And, you know, so yeah. And the other thing, I think, as I said before, the thing that has me the most concerned, and I've never attempted this. This is the gas tank. So there's a pinhole here, and then a series of pinholes along here. So my plan for this will be one of the first things that I'm going to do is I'm going to clean out just this section, because inside the tank is spotless. There's no rust anywhere except right here where they kind of sit on the side stand and the condensation collects. So my plan is I'm going to clean that off outside. I'm going to clean just this area inside with muriatic acid, neutralize it. I'm going to flush the entire tank beforehand, steam the tank so it's not going to explode on me when I try to solder this. I'm going to borrow my buddy's high-powered soldering iron. He's got a pretty heavy-duty iron, and you need something that puts out a lot of heat, because you can't just melt the solder and drip it on. That doesn't work. You've got to heat the metal, and then the metal has to melt the solder. And then I'm hoping that that will seal that up, because I'm not a fan of tank liners, as I've said before. Engine's going to come out, like the whole bike will be stripped down, every last nut and bolt, the same way as I did with the CBX. The only difference is I'm hoping I don't have to do anything to the engine. So when I bought the bike, it was running quite well. The guy who rode it had ridden down the road, and it was running and idling fine, and there was no smoke or anything like that. Kilometers on it, we have, it's not low, it's 66,429 kilometers, so not low, but not obscene. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. And then of course, I mean, along the way, there's the usual cleaning that has to happen. I mean, rear sprockets and chains don't get much dirtier than that. That's pretty nasty, but that's fine, it'll come clean. We will get there. And then up in here, you can see all the hacking that was done to that battery box up in here. This was just kind of hacked right off. Why that would happen, why somebody would do that, I don't know. So a little bit more off. This is really just all body work at this point. There's nothing weird and wonderful yet. Few missing things here and there. As I mentioned before, there's a tab missing there for a mount for the fairing. There's supposed to be 4 bolts, 2 on each side to mount the tank. There was only 1 on each side, so I'll have to get some bolts for that. And yeah, aside from that, so far, just the usual suspect, you know, like fuel lines that are probably well past their sell-by date that need to be replaced. No real surprises. Okay, if this is the first time you're tuning into one of my restorations and kind of haven't seen the process I go through, I'll just touch on it briefly. So every single step I take, anything I take off the bike gets written down in my book. So every step, no matter how simple, no matter how plain the step, every step is written down, every step is numbered. And if there are bolts and fasteners and whatnot associated with the step or anything coming off, it gets bagged. So number 28 seat lock is in that bag. And so every single solitary one is labeled. I don't just label it with the number of the step, I also put it on here. So if for any reason I was to kind of spill something, let's say on my notebook, and I can't read what it is, at least on the bag, everything is actually written on there, so I'll know what's going on. And then there's usually, I have one extra bag that I call miscellaneous crap. So inevitably, I don't think I've ever worked on a bike where I haven't found some rogue washer or nut or something lingering somewhere in the bowels of the bike, and this is the first one. So all that kind of stuff gets put in there, because who knows what you might find missing as you get in there, and quite often it's something that somebody's dropped as they've been working on it in the past. So the other thing I do is, as I'm going through the steps, I'll put an asterisk beside a particular step if it needs my attention on reassembly. So fuel lines here, they're rotted, need to be replaced. And then I'll also kind of start a to buy list. So if anything shows up that I haven't already bought, it goes on this list, so then I can just keep track of what I need to buy. So when I go to put it back together, I'm not waiting. And there you go. That's the basic approach I take. Everything is photographed, videoed. When I think I have enough photographs of everything, I take photographs at every stage of the teardown. And if I think I have enough photos, I take some more. I try to take them from as many different angles as possible as well, because inevitably, when things start to go back together, especially wiring, I find it's just easy to have a lot of reference photographs so you know how to route everything. Lots of times you go to put it back together and, you know, does the wire go on this side of a cable or that side of a cable? If you've got the shop manual and it tells you all the routing, it's a lot better. But if you don't, I just find it's good to have as many pictures as you can get. I think the next thing I'm going to do, just because I heard this bike run when I first picked it up, but I haven't had it running in quite some time. Right, so we got a battery hooked up here. Do a fuel bottle, but let me give it a shot of fuel just to help it along. See what happens. Got it running. Played around with it a bit, just needed a bit more fuel to get through, and the choke doesn't work very well, I've noticed. It kind of springs back to off all the time. But, oh well. Anyway, it's running, so she needs a little bit of work, obviously. I think a little bit of work on that choke mechanism, so we'll sort that out. But bit of smoke coming from the exhaust manifold there. Looks like there's a bit of oil residue, and we can see the correct oil level there, and oil is as black as tar. All right, so I mentioned the choke lever just kind of wants to return, doesn't stay there. So apparently it's not a problem with this. This is the return spring. Inside here, I am told that there is some sort of a friction pad, maybe a spring and a block with some sort of material on there that's supposed to push against this lever and stop it returning so easily, and that they tend to disintegrate and deteriorate. So we'll have to check into that. Looks like somebody has hacked off the end of the throttle adjuster. Okay, so this is all going to come apart again anyway, but I figured while I had it out, this is the one that came off the knob, off the, this is the idle adjuster for the carbs on the ZX7. So this is one I had laying around in my box of carburetor parts. This is actually off a VF1000R, so hopefully there's not an allergic reaction taking place here. I actually need a longer spring here too. This is the one that came off the Kawasaki, but I just figured I'd screw that on there right now, and then it's one less thing to go looking for while I think about it. I'll get it done. All right, so found some botched wires here. So I believe this is the connector for the fuel pump relay. Those two wires have been cut and they are now here. So I know there's no fuel pump in here, there's no fuel pump relay, it's purely gravity fed. So this goes to the carburetor, to the fuel filter, and from the fuel filter right to here, and then from here to the tank. So I'll probably end up fixing that. I think these are just electrical accessory wires according to the wiring diagram. Okay, so just taking off the generator bracket, which is up here. Attaches to the sprocket cover. I've taken the sprocket cover off, and aside from just being part of the general disassembly process, I'm also kind of curious around what the oil leak or the fluid leak was, because this is definitely the area that it was coming from. And I know for sure that this is leaking because, I mean, you can see it right there. That's the clutch slave. So that's definitely leaking. And I don't see, I mean, of course there's this kind of, residue in here, but that's nothing abnormal, I think. I don't know. It seems to me more likely that it's, to have two leaks in the same area is highly coincidental, but this is the cover for the sprocket. It's also where that clutch slave attaches, and I think when I took the clutch slave off, this was pooled in here with clutch fluid, and so naturally it's going to leak out the back side here, and then when it leaks out the back side, where's it going to go? It's going to run down. All right, so we got the drive sprocket off, and I just cleaned that area with some brake clean just to get all the crap off it, and we'll let that sit for another couple of days. We'll see if there's any trace of any oil or anything like that that's starting to seep out of there. There's a little bit of drop of WD-40 under there, but that's about all. So I'm just going around. It might be another day or so before I get around to hauling off these exhaust pipes. So I just want to start soaking them in WD-40 and PB Blaster, and now the messy jobs begin, I guess. Right, so I got the radiator out. It wasn't particularly difficult. Just pulled the hoses off, got everything drained, and disconnected wires and whatnot, and then carefully maneuvered it out. Wasn't too big of a deal. Okay, so here's the next thing that I found that's completely bitched. So this, where these threads here, this is the throttle, the switch gear on the right hand side, throttle cable. So that threaded part is plastic, and that's supposed to be attached to the up there, I think. Alright, so this is the left side switch gear, and this little guy right here is this friction, it's called a friction pad, and it basically rubs against the back of this clutch lever, and it's supposed to provide enough friction that it doesn't kind of just return to the off position. So it's kind of become kind of glazed, I would say. It's not deteriorated, it's just worn and glazed. So I'm gonna detach it with this screw and just kind of see what's underneath. All right, so here's how it works. This is the little damper thing here that goes on the, fits right in there, this way around, I guess, like that. This is the spring that sits underneath it and exerts whatever pressure is required. So, I mean, I imagine one of two things happens, is this spring just kind of weakens over time because it kind of gets kind of rusty, deteriorates, and or this wears down, and therefore the spring cannot provide enough upward force on it to slow that down. So, aside from this being kind of, I don't know, it's worn a little bit, it doesn't look bad. All right, so my fix for now, we'll see how it works, is I just kind of, I cleaned the spring as best I could, and then used some WD-40, and then I used some brake clean. I did the same inside this little block, and then I'm going to clean inside here, and I've got a feeling that it might work, just because like there's a lot of crap in there, and I'm just wondering if it was just kind of getting bound up and not sort of moving enough to apply pressure. So I'm going to try that first before I start trying to shim that spring, and we'll see what happens. All right, so I had to disconnect this clutch slave in order to get the clutch line, the hydraulic line out. Same at the top end. So what I did was I used the lever before I disconnected everything to pop this out, because I have to change the seal anyway, and potentially I may have to change. I already cleaned it out a little bit, but you can see the corrosion there where the piston runs. Below that black corrosion line is where the seal runs, but the question will be, you know, is the corrosion creeping down far enough that it will no longer seal? So one of the things I'll have to do is to polish this back up and see if it will still seal. I do have a new clutch slave seal as well, new one of these black seals to go on here, but we'll see. All right, so here's a quick checkpoint on where we're at. So most of the wiring harness has been disconnected and labeled. Battery box and whatnot is out of there. Clutch slave, clutch line, sprocket, drive sprocket cover. All the levers are, well, the front clutch lever and assembly, master cylinder, reservoir are off. I do next have to take off the front brake calipers and the splitter and move that out of the way. And then I think next I'll take off that oil cooler, and then if I've been able to soak those exhaust bolts, the studs up sufficiently with WD-40 and put some PP Blaster on there, then I'll remove the exhaust system. All right, she's getting down to the bare essentials now. Next is, whether I do it on the floor or I do it up here, I have to decide, but I have to put a bike jack lift underneath here, block that engine up so it can sit level, take the weight of just the engine. Well, initially it would probably be the whole thing, but I want to take off, obviously, the front wheel, the front forks, the triple clamps and whatnot, take off the rear wheel and the swing arm, and then I would just be left with the engine and the frame. Take the down tubes off, and then I can unbolt the two rear mounts and take the frame, the main frame off the engine. So that's the plan. All right, so we're going to try this setup for the next stage of the disassembly. So I put the it's like 1 foot or so side extensions that come with this lift. You can use it for ATVs and snowmobiles and that kind of stuff. So I put those side extensions on. That way I can get the jack, the trolley jack, the bike lift, or whatever you want to call it, underneath the engine. So I got that blocked up. And now I've got the front wheel off the deck and the rear wheel off the deck. And right now I'm stabilizing the frame at the back here with those straps. So I'm going to see if that'll work for me to get off all of these front end components, as well as the swing arm, rear wheel and whatnot. Then after that we'll see about removing the engine. So the other thing I like to do is, before I disassemble the front end, I like to just loosen off these top caps. So loosen the top pinch bolts first, then loosen the top caps on the forks. That way I'm not wrestling with those forks once they're already off the bike. All right, so now we just have the top section of the frame and the engine left. So the plan now is, I've already loosened off the rear mount bolts. And so I think what I'll do is I'll put some additional straps on, and I'll strap the engine. I'll get 3 more straps, and then once the engine is secured down, then I'll remove the remaining engine mounts and take this top frame off. Well, there we have it. That is the big part of the disassembly done. That feels good. So now it's kind of a minor disassembly. So by minor, what I mean is, so all of the frame hangers and whatnot that's attached to this, and so like this kind of stuff, that's all going to come off. These have to come off because this is all going to get painted. Same as the rear, the swing arm here. The chain obviously will come off, and the linkage underneath and the shock will all come off. Any of the bracketry that's attached to that. The engine, we'll see. My basic plan for that is cleaning. That's it. Clean the engine, polish the valve cover, and yeah, I'm hoping that's all I gotta do. As far as what is likely to keep me awake at night at this point is taking those off, taking the wheel discs, the brake rotors off. I'm hoping that Kawasaki has a better form of Loctite than Suzuki used. The last time I had to take wheel discs off to paint wheels, it was on my GSXR 750 Pepsi edition that I did, and I've never in my life had such difficulty taking those things off. I got most of them out eventually. I mean, I had to use a 2-foot breaker bar for the entire time they were coming out. Like normally you can crack them and then use a ratchet to take them off, and I wasn't able to do that. 2 of them, no matter what I tried, I couldn't get them out. I ended up stripping the Allen heads and had to go and get nuts welded on and then get them removed that way, and had to buy some new bolts for that. But I'm really hoping that these ones are not as difficult. So here's just a quick pan of all the bits and a few bobs. So there we go. Now the real work begins. This has been easy so far. I'm sure there'll be a lot of work ahead. So all this stuff's got to be refinished, replaced, repainted, refurbished, whatever you want to call it. It's got to happen now. So that's going to do it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, share, subscribe. And this is episode 1 of probably about 10, I would guess, of the ZX7. Thanks a lot. Talk to you soon.